Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here today to do a Friday Reads video, where I wrap up the week in reading, talk about any exciting bookish things that have happened. We're in a little bit of a lull in terms of the exciting bookish things because earlier this week we got the shortlist for the Booker Prize, and I will have my link to my reaction of that in the description box down below if you haven't watched it and you would be interested in it. So not too much has gone on in the bookish world. We're sort of in that lull. Now we have the shortlist for the Booker Prize. That is going to be quiet until the winner is announced in November. The winner will be announced on November 10th for the Booker Prize. But we do have exciting things coming up. And before we move into the Friday Reads portion, I just want to sort of give you that heads up that these things are on their way. On Tuesday, October 7th, we will get the shortlist for the National Book Award for fiction and for translated fiction. Hopefully on that day, I will be able to film a video and get it posted because this is another book prize that I love to follow. And there's not a whole lot of turnaround time. It feels like we just got the long list. I'll link my reaction to the long list down below if you want to check out what's there. So it's coming already. And then on Thursday, October 9th, we get the Nobel Prize for Literature. I meant to look up the people who are leading the odds because people take bets on these, especially in the UK, every year. And every year they're wrong. But it is still always interesting to see who people are sort of coalescing around. And, often the winner will be somewhere in the top 20 of names that are being bandied about, but they're usually not in the top 5, which I just find very interesting. So we'll see. So, October, that week that has October 7th and October 9th is going to be very big. So, watch this space or watch your favorite space for book news to get reactions to that and updates. It is finally getting a little bit cold. It will creep up into the 80s, but it has mostly been in the 60s and 70s. So it's nice that we're starting to cool down. It looks like it's starting to head into fall. I have this blanket here in case I get cold. We're changing seasons, although the blanket is trying to slip down on me. So that's fun. Oh, and then the only other thing, I had a fun thing happen this week. Sometimes when you have a lot of t-shirts and I have a lot of t-shirts, things kind of get stuck in the back. So sometimes you're like, I have to see what's back there. And you find something that you haven't worn in a really long time and you get really excited. That happened to me. And that's why I'm wearing a t-shirt that has Sherlock Holmes riding Moby Dick today, because why not? This is actually a shirt from Northshire Bookstore, which is in the location I have been to is in Manchester, Vermont. They also have one in Saratoga, I think. I haven't been to that one, but Northshire was my favorite bookstore until I got to know Montana Book Company here in Montana. So this is an excellent bookstore, and I'm happy I dug out this t-shirt. I mean, just for the fact that it's Sherlock Holmes riding Moby Dick alone, I got this about 10 years ago from that store. So I'm not confident that they would have this anymore if you try to check their website or call them. But if you are in the Manchester, Vermont area, that location specifically used to be my favorite bookstore. It's still a great bookstore. I just haven't been there in about 10 years. And now my family doesn't really go there. We used to go there every fall. And now I'm in Montana, so it's harder for me to get there. But, I don't think my sisters have really been going there. One of my sisters still goes there. But, I don't really have any reason to be there anymore, except the fact that I love this bookstore. So that's fun. Let's jump to the Friday Reads portion of this video. It's been an interesting reading week. I did finish 2 books, but I feel like at this point I am completely stalled out on the 2 books that I am currently reading. Let's get into it. But we're going to start with the 2 books that I finished. And then we're going to go from there. The first, excuse me, almost lost my voice for a second there. The first book that I finished this week was Mrs. Miniver by Jan Struther. If you follow along, you already know about this book from everything that I said about it in my last Friday Reads video. I don't actually have a whole lot to add to that conversation. So my last Friday reads will be linked down below. I have a whole discussion about this book. But the notable thing to me was that it is the basis of the film, which won Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Director, and I want to say Best Adapted Screenplay for the year 1942. And if you follow along, I am obsessed with the Academy Awards. So when I only recently discovered that it was based on a book. I just hadn't known that before. And when I was at a used bookstore in Montana earlier this year, there was a really creepy basement, and I was down there. That's where like the smaller mass market paperbacks were, and it was really creepy. But I hung out and I worked my way through the fiction section, and I'm so glad I did, because as I got to the end where the S's were, I found a copy of this book and just grabbed it. And it doesn't have a price on it, but it was really cheap too. But anyway, I just really got it in my head that I wanted to read it, and I was inspired to pick it up. I included it in my pile of possibilities for the month of September because it is a shorty, and September is Shorty September. Yeah, it's 161 pages. It's really short. And the main thing to know is that this book is basically a literary embodiment of Keep Calm and Carry On. It was something that was written in the lead up to U.S. involvement of World War II. It is actually credited by the Roosevelts as a great tool to help encourage Americans to get involved in the war effort. And it was also written, it was serialized in newspapers, which means that there are very short chapters. The chapters are about 3 to 4 pages, and each one is just a story about something Mrs. Miniver was doing. It could be related to the war, but mostly it's related to her family and life at the time. It's, as I said, the literary embodiment of Keep Calm and Carry On. And that made it a very interesting reading experience. It's very charming, and I'm so glad that I read it. And, I don't think it's going to be a favorite or anything like that, but it is a fun book to have in my collection, and I'm really glad that I read it. Now I feel like I need to rewatch the movie. And the movie, from what I remember, is different. I don't think any of the episodes here are in the movie. Like, there's nothing about orchids or no German pilots get shot down that are discovered by Mrs. Miniver. So, and I did note that Jan Struther was not exactly a fan of the film adaptation. She thought it was sort of a sugary confection. But I don't know about sugary confection, but she was not a fan of the film adaptation. So it actually would be really interesting to rewatch the film of this. But don't have too much to add other than what I said last week about this book. But it was the first book that I finished this week. The next book was something else that I had included on my pile of possibilities for Shorty September. Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress by Dai Siji. And this is actually something I listened to on audio. It was available on Libby, so I snapped it up and listened to it. And it's a really short book. The audio is about 4 hours. The book itself is 184 pages. I was bored, I have to say. I just really didn't feel into this story, which is surprising for me. I've owned this book since it came out in paperback. And so this is one of the books I have owned the longest and had not gotten to read. It is copyright 2001 for the English translation. And then the first Anchor Books edition, which is the one I have, was published in November of 2002. So I have basically had this book since 2002, maybe 2003, because I think I was working in a bookstore at the time. And I think what happened is people kept coming in and buying it, and I kept hearing things about it. So 2002, 2003, I've had this book without reading it. And I've always held on to it. It's survived multiple moves and periods where I have been sort of pillaging my bookshelves for things to unhaul and make space, maybe because it doesn't take up a lot of space, but I was really interested in the premise of this book as well. So to have been bored and admittedly to already be forgetting a lot of details about this book, and I finished it just a couple of days ago, is not great. So yeah, it was kind of an unsatisfying experience, especially after having waited that long to get to this book. So, what is it about? You have two young men, teenagers, during the Cultural Revolution in China. So I think it's around 1970, possibly 1972. I'm forgetting the exact year where this is taking place, but it takes place over about a year. So they are sent to a small village to be re-educated. And while there, they discover a trove of books that have been sort of banned. The first book they get from that collection is by Balzac, and it awakens a lot in them. And they also fall in love with a little Chinese seamstress. So there you go. That explains the title right there. And, you know, one of them is very intelligent. The other one is really good at navigating the world. Like, his intelligence comes out in the form of he's very smart at manipulating or presenting things, telling stories. He's a great storyteller. Like, in the very beginning, they're one of the first boy, the one who's telling the story, plays the violin, and that comes out when they arrive in the village. And Mozart comes up, and he's afraid to say anything because Mozart is, you know, something that would be frowned on as part of the Cultural Revolution. But when he is asked for a song, he kind of stumbles, and the other boy interjects and says, "Oh, Mozart is thinking about Chairman Mao." And he just plays a Mozart, encourages the other boy, just play a Mozart song. So he plays a Mozart song, but they tell everyone that it's called Mozart is Thinking of Chairman Mao. So there are ways in which they're sort of subverting the education that they are supposed to be getting. They've been sent away from their families in the cities. Their parents have both sort of run afoul of this cultural movement that is happening in interesting ways. One of them, their father is a dentist, and he spread the word that he had worked on Chairman Mao's teeth, which tells people that Chairman Mao's teeth weren't perfect, and that's not something people should know. So again, you would think I would be really into this book, or that it would be really interesting, and for some reason I just could not connect to it at all. Maybe it turned out not to be a book that was good for where I am right now as a mood reader. I just really could not connect to it or get into it. And the other unfortunate thing is that B.D. Wong, the actor, reads the audiobook. And he mostly does a good job, but he does do that thing that bothers me in an audiobook where you have a male narrator, and when a female is speaking, they start to talk like this, and I just don't like that. So maybe there's an element of that as well, although, you know, the Chinese seamstress, a mother figure who comes into the plot, there aren't many women in this book, so it didn't happen all that often. But I was surprised that I struggled so much to get into this, and a little disappointed. And after all this time, now having read it, I feel ready to say goodbye. It's going to be unhauled in the future to make way for books that I might enjoy more. So it is what it is. But that ended up kind of starting a trend, because I think I finished Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress on Monday, and I finished Mrs. Miniver, I believe, on Saturday. So starting on Sunday, I picked up Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. And I think I had even mentioned in my last video that, or last Friday Reads video, that this was the book I wanted to read next. It just came out, and I've heard so many good things about it, and I was really looking forward to it. Random House was kind enough to send me a copy of the book, which made things really easy. And part of me is wondering if I should wait to do the audio of this instead, because I started this book on Sunday. I'm filming this on Friday. I'm not 100 pages into the book yet. I am on page 80. I just feel stuck. So one thing that I struggle with as a reader, I think this is the big thing that is sort of bothering me with this book, or making it hard for me to connect to this book. My brain has a tendency to sort of nope out when ghosts are involved, when elements of like the supernatural are involved. It's a thing about me. I really struggle to get beyond that. So this is ultimately going to be, I believe, about 3 different people. But right now we're just about the central couple, Cal and his wife, Becky. Becky has second sight, or has the gift of sight, however you want to call it. She describes the first time she heard a voice from the beyond as she was with her friend and her friend's mother. The husband and father had recently gone to get cigarettes and never came back. And it was a difficult thing for them. And suddenly she hears the father's voice telling her that he is nearby. And she tells them, like, hey, he's telling me that he's nearby. And they get very upset. And in the spring, they find that his car had crashed into the river. And it just didn't get revealed or found until spring came around and the thaw happened. So she does seances in the house, and the first 80 pages, there's a section in the beginning that I was really enjoying, which is about Cal. Like, the opening of this book is great. It really captured my interest. It's about Cal, who has one leg that is 2 inches shorter than the other, and how that gets him out of fighting in World War II. But there's another boy that isn't so lucky. And the guilt that he feels as someone who doesn't have to go off and fight when a lot of the other men his age and older have gone off to be part of the war effort. So we have sort of weird ties to Mrs. Miniver as well going on. And it's just fun and interesting when that sort of thing happens. That part was really interesting. And then he gets married. His relationship with his father is interesting. There's a section at the very end of that first section that's more specifically about Cal that I thought was really poignant, that involves his father and his son. And so I was thinking that I was going to love this book, but then the next section is very much about Becky and her gift. And that is where I completely stalled out on this book. So I know 2 people who have really loved this book in particular, and I reached out to one of them, Danny, who is That Bookish Bear on Instagram. And I said to him, look, I feel really stuck. I have not gotten more than 100 pages into this book. And I think it's this thing about, like, the seances and the ghosts. I really struggle with that Oogie Boogie stuff, is the way I said it. And he came back and he told me that he totally understands, but after the first 100 pages, somebody else comes into the story, and it's not that the seances and the Oogie Boogie stuff, I'm calling it Oogie Boogie stuff, but that storyline that involves, like, speaking to the dead, it doesn't go away, but it fades into the background much more. So basically, I just have to get over that hump, and that's where I have been stuck. He sent me that message, I think, Wednesday, and it's now Friday, and I haven't gotten over that hump. And it's just something about me. I really struggle with elements like that, and I don't know why. And I guess that might be an area where I am a little bit close-minded, and, we all have blind spots and things. I think that is one of mine. And I don't really know how I'm going to resolve that at this moment. I still want to read the book. I do sort of wonder if switching to the audio would help get over that hump, because if I could just get past it to the point where somebody else comes, maybe the next section, if the perspective shifts a little bit onto a different character, I feel like I could keep moving forward. But right now I just feel stuck. And yeah, so I don't really know what I'm going to do. Now the weekend is yawning in front of me, and I am trying to think, am I going to try to power through Buckeye, or am I going to take a little break? Because that has worked for me twice recently when I was feeling a little bit stuck. It worked for The Land in Winter. I was able to finish that book when I took a little break over the weekend and then came back. And it worked for Flesh by David Zaloy. So I'm thinking that might be the thing to do here. And maybe I can come back with fresh perspective. Maybe I can come back and try the audio instead. So that's the plan. I do still want to finish this, but I just feel hopelessly stuck at this point in the book at the moment. And I want to try to keep going, but here we are. I started The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Karen Desai on audio after I finished Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, and I'm similarly stuck. I freely admit I have not listened to the audio in 2 days now. So I'm sort of at a similar place where I feel sort of stuck. And I admit I feel a little more stuck with The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, which I have heard wonderful things for in terms of advance buzz. Obviously, it's not on the shortlist for the Booker Prize, and probably will be a contender for the Women's Prize next year. So, like, big things have happened for this book. Critics have loved it. It's probably a good bet if you want to bet on what will be on the New York Times book reviews, 10 best books of the year. So part of me wants to do it, but I just am feeling really stuck again. And if I'm being honest, bored. So there's another through line with the audiobooks that I have been listening to this week, where I've just had struggles connecting to them and feeling bored. And then that carried into the print book as well, in that I don't feel that connection to it. But I admit with Sonia and Sunny, I'm feeling a little bored. Part of that is probably also because in the first chapter, it's about Sonia's family in India. And I thought that story felt a lot more interesting. You know, you get to know her parents and her aunt, who was described as unlucky. It's funny. It's interesting. And then it starts talking about Sonia. They get on the phone with her and she can't stop crying because she feels lonely. And then the story shifts perspective to Vermont, where Sonia has gone to college. And I admit, I don't find Sonia very interesting, at least not at this point. And I think the problem with that is that when you're an hour into an audio and you aren't really enjoying one of the central characters of this book, because it's the loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. We haven't even met Sunny at this point. There is still 24 hours in the audiobook. This is a 25-hour audiobook. So 1 hour in, I'm already feeling not interested in one of the central characters, and there's still 24 hours to go. It's so easy with a shorter book to say, well, I can power through because it won't take up a whole lot of my time. But this is 24 hours is a lot to devote to, or it feels like a lot, especially when you're struggling to get into a book in the first place. And I can't help but feel like I just want it to be more about her parents and her aunt, who is unlucky, and not so much about Sonia. Like, this story about her in college and this artist, I don't feel compelled by it. And I've heard a lot of really good things about this book. So I feel like I want to keep going, but I just feel stuck. So as with Buckeye, I'm sort of deciding, what am I going to do? Do I take a break? Do I try to power through it and just see what happens? Maybe I should just hold out for a library hold, which will probably take a really long time for this, and try to read it in print. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. So I just feel stuck. And I do think I want to take a break and pivot, maybe listen to something else on audio first, and then think about coming back to The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. But it's not... I maybe it's also me at the moment, because it's been a week, basically, a lot of like life stress and things like that we don't have to get into here. So maybe part of the difficulty to connect to the books that I'm currently reading stems from that. Maybe just overall stress and frustration is making it difficult to engage with books right now. That is very possible. It's very possible. But at the end of the day, I'm really struggling with both of these books. And I think a break from both of them is probably what the doctor ordered. And I just need to decide for sure that that's what I want to do. And if it is what I want to do, which it likely is, what would I want to do in the meantime? Maybe something short. Try to squeeze something else short in before Shorty September is over. Who knows? So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my reading right now. And as I said, I'm just sort of... I think I need a break. from these books. Maybe I need something a little bit more fast-paced, something a little more fun, because I will say Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny feels determinedly slow. And that's not a great feeling to have 1 hour in, knowing that you have 24 hours left in this audio. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to hear where you're at, what you've been reading, watching, loving. There's a new Bake Off episode that Joel and I are going to watch tonight. Can't wait for that. And we've been watching the new season of Only Murders in the Building. We waited until a couple of episodes were out. So that's what we're doing. No spoilers, because we're only 2 episodes in, and there have already been, I think, 5. So we have 3 episodes that have not aired. But yeah, that's what we've been doing. I'd love to hear what you're doing. And as always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.